Welcome to Mesh.
What's up, everybody? Welcome, definitely to Mesh. I'm so glad to be here. I can't tell you guys how excited I am to have our guest today. He's an incredible human being, friend, person, artist, just somebody with so much knowledge on so many different things. So we get to talk to him today, and I want you guys to welcome my friend, Mr. O.L. Buckley. How you doing,
Good, man. Always a pleasure when we can connect and get together. So
man?
I'm excited
It's the
about this.
truth. Yeah, it's definitely the truth. I'm telling you, I don't think I really say that about too many people, but you're not just a friend to me. You're definitely family. You're a brother to me. And I'm just
Likewise.
I'm thankful, man. I'm thankful that you're here with us today. And I can't
My
wait to
mom
really
sees you
dig
that way,
in.
by the way.
Yeah. Well, my mom does too.
No
My
doubt.
mom does too, man.
Yeah.
My parents came out to your wedding when you
Mm-hmm.
got married, and it was
Yep.
definitely a
Yep.
family affair. So, yeah, we've got a lot of stories to tell, but we're not going to tell some of those stories.
And a lot more to not tell.
Yeah, man, that's so funny. But I want to dive right into it. Our
Hmm.
community here at Mesh, we have it's for creatives, anybody in the
Hmm.
creative world, from in front of the camera to behind the camera.
Hmm.
And there's so many. This isn't the cookie cutter type industry where you go to class and it just works exactly the way it does for
Right.
everybody, literally for every person, for every individual. The
Hmm.
journey is different,
Hmm.
and some people go to school for it, some people don't go to school for it.
Hmm.
And you have success on both ends. There's not really one specific way to go about this.
Right.
So with you, I want to talk about your musical journey. You started pretty young, and you grew up in two pretty incredible cities. One being San Diego, the other being Chicago.
Hmm.
Tell us a little bit about what sparked your interest initially when it came to music.
Yeah. Really good question, by the way. I would say if we're going to go with the word sparked, and when I hear the word spark, I think initiate, like what
Hmm.
initiated. I would definitely say that it was the outlet of expression that had the idea of being able to impact lives. So, in other words, I could just, have my art, sort of tucked away, just for me to just kind of, do as an outlet, as a release or relief, even depending on how you want to spin it. But it would definitely be the fact that it was the idea that said I could do this and it could have some type of um, transformative, positive impact on other people who could
Mm,
identify. And so that medium being then music, and we could talk about even genre wise, what um, style or type of music that was, if you will. That was the idea. It was like, whoa, I could get this out, thoughts,
yeah.
feelings, emotions, and then have that be interpreted in a way that other people could connect with, and that would, help them along their journey of life. And so I
Yeah.
was drawn to that idea and that ability to do that. That was my spark.
Mm. That's pretty interesting, man. I've of course I've heard your work because again we've worked together in different
Hmm.
situations and whatnot. I learned early on this, and this is gonna it is what it is, but I learned early on never to get in a word battle with a lyricist. Do not do this because
Come on, man.
because you're so creative. I mean, you're so creative and you're so quick with it. What that whole art, like when
Hmm.
you see people back in the day having
Hmm.
ciphers
Right. Hmm.
just battles. Like, what is it? How do you hone that part of your craft? Because that's not something people can do.
Yeah. So I'm going to use the word bank in a generic, zoomed out, very broad sense.
Hmm.
So part of one's capacity to do that is to have a word bank where you could access and withdraw words. So you have to sort of expand your vocabulary. So there is in the space of lyricism a necessity to have a extensive and a broad vocabulary. You want to have um, a a vast lexicon where you can just pull words, right, to be able to say the same thing different ways. That actually is the definition of a synonym. So it's another word that carries the same meaning and essence of another word. So the more words you have to express the same thing, whether you're talking about love or frustration or bliss or whatever, the more words you have to express that, then that just enhances your ability to be able to pull and use those words. And so that's part of it, having a word bank to pull from
Yeah.
that you're constantly making deposits in. But then there's another aspect where you take words and you hear um, sort of the breakdown of syllables. So if I were to take, you know, you take like you go to class, you take a biology class, right? You take a science class, and they teach you the word hypothesis. Well, all right, how many syllables is that? Hy, pa, the, sis. So we only got four syllables. So you could say hypothesis, and that opens up the
Mm.
ability to spin off of any one of those syllables, hypo or thesis. And so it's a dance of the syllables, where you choose to focus the emphasis, or as the commonly quoted joke from a movie, I forget what movie, putting a different emphasis on another syllable, right? So you can do that. Even that joke, even that
Yeah.
statement is what I'm is explaining what I'm talking about. So it's an art that pulls from a broad range of words.
Yeah. And so in order to be able to get those collect those words, are you reading? Are you listening? What do you do to do that, to build your library
Yeah, you
of
take
words?
in everything around you, and that includes conversations. Early on, we just had terrestrial traditional radio, so we didn't have like podcasts. Well, podcast
Mm.
just opens up, the, you know, the ability, like what we're doing here, opens up the
Yeah.
ability for more people to express more thought. The more people who express more thought puts more content in your view to then pull from. So it's not just the library or just a
Yeah.
television show or just a radio show, but it's all the different mediums and modes of media that you can pull from and be like, yep, 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 this concept, that concept, that concept. So you do that way. Just taking the world around you. It could be a billboard going down the highway. It could be a pop-up ad on social media. I mean, it's weird. Just anything. It could be, the latest Netflix stand-up comic, series you saw. And not to sound boring, then there's always the dictionary.
Which is now, I guess, Google,
Right,
right?
right, right. And that's
They
just
have
the
everything.
the beauty of that, though. While it may sound archaic, the beauty of that is that that's probably the most centralized place for words.
Yeah. Yeah. So now, okay. So now let's take the two different markets that you grew up
Mm-hmm.
in, that you came up in. Especially music. This was kind of the foundation of your musical
Mm-hmm.
journey. What is the difference? What was the difference between being in San Diego as opposed to Chicago?
Okay, good question. Right. So Chicago was first, and then San Diego, and then back to Chicago. Interestingly enough, so
Okay.
um, in Chicago, the very city itself is founded on the blues, but it also has a very vibrant jazz community. And
Hmm.
then there's also a theater community. So when you put musicals, blues with jazz, that sort of creates that, establishes that whole basis. And we could even talk about just the presence of even gospel music there. So when you pull all those
Hmm.
together, because it is a kind of melting pot in a sense, culturally speaking. So you're gonna have people
Yeah.
bringing in, music that would be, germane to whatever their heritage is into a city, and all that heritage is gonna bump up against each other in one way or another. And so that becomes a fabric that you can pull from. So Chicago had that.
Mm.
San Diego, obviously being California, has a lot of, while not so much like theater, yes, there's theater in San Diego, right?
Yeah.
Yes, there's musicals in San Diego, but not as pronounced as it would be in a place like a Chicago. Chicago wouldn't even be the most robust place for that necessarily either, but it would definitely have it more than San Diego would. So San Diego, and its difference was that it was very much. It's interesting. San Diego had a lot of cover bands. When I really kind of go back
Mm.
down memory lane, had a lot of cover bands. But even his heritage wise, the Latin influence in San Diego, just off of its proximity
Yeah.
to Mexico, etc., that's going to happen. And so that Latin influence was very pronounced. And we can talk about the different, subsets of Latin music too. But it was definitely there. And so that got me open and exposed to that expression of music, from that cultural context. But here's what's interesting: in San Diego, um, the appeal to certain styles of music by people, by just the very diverse cultural diversity. Everybody brings their interpretation, or maybe interpolation is the better way to say it,
Mm.
of how they create that genre of music. So if we're talking, as an example, about lyricism in hip hop, and you have, Latin brothers and sisters who are into hip hop, but they're going to bring that
Yeah.
um, Latin expression of that music onto that. And that creates another texture and nuance to the lyricism as well, because there may be writing songs that are weaving between English and Spanish. So they may be pulling
Yeah.
words, in a different translation and bouncing off of that syllable, and then bouncing into maybe an English rhyme sounding or rhyming syllable. So it just really opened me up, um, culturally, to be able to really incorporate, listen, and appreciate that nuance, and all that shaped how ultimately I
Yeah.
would have communicated my expression of art.
Yeah. You know, it's funny. If you wouldn't have gone, I believe this. If you wouldn't have gone to spent that time in San Diego, there probably wouldn't be no mankind.
Maybe, maybe. That's funny. You would say that, but hey, man,
We'll explain what mankind is
in
later.
just a minute, right?
We'll get to that in a second. So this, I think this is important too. Chicago, there's a lot of major artists, you know, that are in the hip hop genre that came out of Chicago.
R
What
and
are
B
some
as
of those
well.
artists? Yeah, R&B as well. Yeah, absolutely, and gospel.
Yep.
But some of the hip hop artists that came out of there, tell us who they are.
Yeah. So, I'll kind of even give you a little timeline of
Yeah.
national prominence. So I didn't mention this, and I should have. I failed to mention this, so
All right.
forgive me.
We got time. Go ahead.
Chicago would definitely be the bedrock, or yeah, I would say bedrock or cradle even of house music. You
Mm,
can't think house music without thinking Chicago. So a lot of
yeah.
instrumentation, a lot of that, right? Um, and the piling on of words and expressions bouncing through the rhythmic disco-esque aspect of house music that anybody who's what we would say a house head, regardless of where they live, understands the importance that Chicago played in that genre and style of musical expression. That said, um, for many years, from a hip hop standpoint, hip hop was sort of a stepchild to the house scene, house music scene. As the undeniable prominence of hip hop music emerged and really came to surface, there were some early folks, but I'm going to just speak sort of generationally for me. It would have been give myself a disclaimer in case I'm missing some earlier pioneers from Chicago, but it would have definitely been groups like Crucial Conflict, um, uh, Do or Die, um, The Brat, excuse me, The Brat,
The
um,
bread.
and Common Sense, who later dropped the sense and just became known as Common,
Common, yeah.
obviously. And of course, Kanye West.
Kanye
So,
West.
um, and that's just to name a few.
Yeah.
So, um, that definitely, and a whole host of DJs and producers that would definitely be a
Yeah.
part of that. And then on the R&B side, unbeknownst to a lot of people, Shaka Khan, um, Chicago. Little not so popular fun fact or not so well known fun fact: Soul Train started in Chicago
Mm.
before going to L.A. Yeah.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
Yep.
I didn't. I did not know. I need to watch the show. Oh. Wow, I didn't know that. I mean, yeah, that's yeah, it's got a lot. It's so rich in history,
hmm
music, musical history for sure.
hmm
Yeah, you spent your time there, and then after that, then you moved to Dallas, right?
Yep.
Am I okay? So I just want to make sure I get that correct.
hmm
So after you had done that, you moved to Dallas, and then there was just a whole other journey that was set up for you there. Talk to us now. Bring Dallas into the picture of all of this.
So through a whole series of events, I ended up in Dallas, and so glad I did because a lot of my musical alliances, friendships, um, and family, musical family, was forged and founded there in Dallas. When I was in Chicago, when I was in San Diego, I was really just sort of cutting my teeth, figuring my way. Who am I, even as an artist? Where do I land on certain things? In terms of what's going to be my mo, my sort of face in the music community, the world community,
Hmm.
um, global community, and Dallas really helped bring a definition and a refining, a clarity to me musically, just through the various relationships that were forged there. So when we're talking about Dallas's impact on me as an artist, it would definitely be an
Yeah.
appreciation for a more southern expression of all the aforementioned genres that I've already talked about, and a great deal of musicality, instrumentation,
Yeah.
and musicianship that is rife and prominent and pronounced in Texas, and even uniquely in Dallas. And so those relationships really help bring some clarity, definition, and even refining. Okay, this is where I fit. This is where I gel, and I kind of got to nestle in and get comfortable in my artistry in Dallas in a way that hadn't happened or transpired yet in Chicago or San Diego, though all of them were contributors. right,
Yeah.
to that.
Yeah.
But I really landed and sort of got my feet under me in a manner of speaking in Dallas. And so I really appreciate that. And had that not happened, I wouldn't have got to, have some of the most amazing experience as an artist that I did have, and even
Yeah.
opportunities. So,
Yeah. Of of all of your musical experiences, what would you say is one of the biggest ones that just that stood out for you as a I'll use the word as the pinnacle. I'll say one of the pinnacles of your career, because I know there was several,
mhm.
but something that just really stood out to you in your music. What's one of those experiences anywhere of any of the places you were in?
So obviously on that question, I'm going to be pulling from, I mean, just a big basket of great
Of
experiences
course,
that I could all say were
yeah.
peaks at various points in my career. And one of them, this is just one, would definitely be the acceptance into even like GP,
Hmm.
God's property. And when I say acceptance, because I was not a singer um, in reality, though I was in my mind. Jokes, but not really. Um, but
I still think you can sing.
I know. And so, inside joke that is just going outside. Um, so yeah, it was just the acceptance. They said, hey, you have a place to fit here. I think all artists in some way want to feel a sense of home and acceptance by their
Hmm.
peers,
Hmm.
and not limited by what my particular skill set is or abilities are. Doesn't have to compete with yours. In fact, it can complement. It was one of those complementary moments where me as a lyricist, as an MC, could come together with singers, could come together with guitarists and keyboardists and drummers, and we can all make beautiful art together.
Yeah.
That was a beautiful time and opportunity that really made me feel like I fit somewhere
Yeah.
where we could all complement one another.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know why we're losing your audio. There's something going on with it. You want to check it out really quick?
Testing, testing. Can you hear me?
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah, it's back on. So yeah, so yeah, man. I remember that time as well. Also, being a part of that experience. I think that's where we really got to know each other
Mm-hmm.
musically. And I mentioned I made the comment earlier about mankind. It's because we did. Probably nobody knows this other than our community back home, but we did a group where it was the Latino singer and the rapper, and we made it work into this what I felt was going to be a hot album. It never came out, but hey,
Likewise,
it was great.
for me, we kind of
Yeah.
felt like, I can say this now looking back in the rearview mirror. It's kind of like, I think we were the Lucy Pearl before Lucy Pearl um, meets Fuji's. Obviously, the Fuji's were earlier. Um, but it was where it's like, oh, singer, rapper, guitarist, we could just sort of like put it together and, really see what this looks like. It was experimental and experiential. And I think it might have been slightly ahead of its time to do that,
Mhm.
or definitely the very early part of the bell curve before different artists were coming together and doing, mashup groups like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so too.
Beyond
We were
doing a song
definitely,
together, like actually doing an
yeah,
entire project
yeah,
together,
yeah, doing a project
especially a
together. Yeah.
concept album.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've actually heard some who showed, I think King had one of the tracks and he showed it to me the other day.
Really?
Yeah. And when I say the other day, it's maybe like a year ago.
Wow.
But
Okay.
we need to pull those. We need to have a listening session with those things.
Let me guess.
Um,
It's probably somewhere on a Lassie or a Lacy drive back when people used those.
right. right. So now from there, and this is where, because you've now uh gotten into the world of finance,
Hmm.
and that's literally an entire podcast all in and of itself.
Hmm.
Probably several. That's a whole series of podcasts there, but really, like, in terms of our community, I think some of the biggest mistakes that we make, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think some of the biggest mistakes that we make as, as newcomers into this industry, is that we don't really take our financial future. It doesn't play a part. Not all. There are some. I'm very impressed with some of the, these younger cats coming out. They're thinking more long term and setting themselves up now, so that they can have, long longevity in the game, but without having to consider, whether they're going to be working that day or not. So
Right.
they've set themselves up pretty well. But what would you say, to an artist, um, how they should start thinking, or retrain the way they're thinking about their finances?
So I think that's a great question. And I would answer that simply by saying think differently about how you define the role players of your career. And when I say defining or redefining the role players of your career, or those who would be integrally involved in your career, I would definitely say just think differently about how you define them, how you title them. Let me give you an example of what I mean by that. So obviously, you know, the role that, say, a record label would play in the life of a musician or an artist today is different than what it was even when you and I were, you know,
Hmm.
coming at it from that angle. And
Yeah.
so ultimately, and it took me too long to figure this out, um, but to just accept the fact that a record label is a bank.
Mm.
They are a bank. Okay. And so, like with any bank, who's going to front you or front load you means money to facilitate your career, whatever phase that is. They're going to give you a loan. What would you do if you got a loan from any bank? You have to pay it back, right? And when you
Yeah.
pay it back, nobody's giving you $1,000 for you to pay them back $1,000, or $500,000 or $1 million to pay them back $1 million. They're giving you $1 million to
Yeah.
pay them back 1,500,000 or 1,200,000 or
Yeah.
whatever. So you have to think about it that way. And so when you think about who all the role players are, you say, "Oh, I know you're a record company, but you're a bank." Effectively, that's
Yeah.
what you are essentially as a bank. You got other things that you do, right? This whole marketing and all that jazz. And we get all
Right.
that. But you're a bank. And when you think about your manager, think about your manager as, and these aren't evil words, by the way. I don't want to use these terms in a sense of painting a derogatory or pejorative view of them. I just want us to, as artists, taking control of your financial future as an artist calls for defining people by what they actually are, or institutions by what they actually are. So my record company is a bank, effectively. My manager is a expense.
Hmm.
You're an expense.
Yeah.
Your manager goes out to dinner with you and somebody else who you're negotiating some aspect of your career.
Right.
Whatever your manager eats, that's your expense, right? So you got to look at them like, okay, I get who you are, and I get that you play a very vital role in my career. But all in all, you're like a dependent. Think about like when you do your taxes, right? Like how many dependents do you have? I'm not
Hmm.
calling managers children. What I am saying is that at the bottom line, they are a line item, a line item of expense. And so you have to interpret things by what it's going to require of you. I'm not saying that they're not
Yeah.
important. I'm not saying that they can't play a vibrant and healthy role. I, they can. What I am saying is, though, don't get swept up in the warm and fuzzies by the fact that there are people there, and they are people, and they are important. but you also got to recognize that there is an expense associated with them in your
Yeah.
career. So, right, all of that. So defining people for who they are and what that means for you. Because here's what I can assure you: while we want to have good and great relationships with all kinds of people that are relative and instrumental in our career, and we're benefiting from them, and they're benefiting from us.
Yeah.
Um, and so there is a mutual benefit there that even goes beyond something monetary or money wise. But you're asking me a money question, so I want to say that because that has been helpful for me
Yeah.
to really look at. I get it. We're on the same plane. I get it.
Yeah.
Your hotel room is next to mine. I get it. But I also get what else I also get? It's coming out of my bill.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's a reality too.
Yeah. Man, I think that is so that I think if people can get past the because it is exciting when you think record label's giving me a deal, you think record label and it's glamorized in a way that we're definitely not thinking in terms of it being a bank or I'm gonna have to pay this back. We're just thinking, whoa, I've made it, right?
Yep.
So to get past that part of that way of thinking and understand that this is a record deal, it is a contract, it is an agreement that you're signing. And believe me, the agreement is definitely more in their favor than it is in yours,
Absolutely it is.
especially at the beginning.
Absolutely
So
it is.
looking at it that way, understanding that this is, like you said, like tag what these things are, what these entities are, that it's not what you think it is. Look at it for what it actually is.
Mhm.
That's what I'm hearing you say.
That is correct. Yeah. I had somebody say to me a long time ago, like early on in the banking industry, when I got into it, they said to me, "What are typically the biggest, tallest buildings in any city?" Banks,
Yeah,
right?
that's true.
They're loaning out money and they're making money on the money they loan out. They're in the business of selling money. Well, you know, whose house is bigger? Yours or the record company's headquarters? You know
Right.
how their building got so tall? It sits on a catalog of so many artists. And
Hmm.
so you have to be very honest about that reality. You have to be sober
Yeah.
about that. And I say that in a very,
Yeah.
mental sense. You got to be mentally sober about these things.
Yeah. Yeah, man. That's so real. Some of the what are some of the biggest one give us one of the biggest mistakes you see people make when it comes to their money?
Um,
I'm sure there's a lot, and I'm sure there's a ton of them, but give us like maybe the one or the top three you think.
the top one that I would say is
Okay.
when you first get some type of a situation, like if it's a advance on future earnings. That's really what it
Mhm.
is. It's an
Yeah.
advance on future earnings. It's not a gift. It's an
Right.
advance, right? And so what happens is, in fact, even things that are called gifts are advances in one way or another. And so one of the biggest mistakes is always assuming that because it's good now, it's always going to be good.
Mm.
That's probably the biggest mistake. Because we all think we're so unique. We all think to some degree or another, we're going to be breakthrough in some sense, right?
Mm.
And we are unique. But that doesn't mean that our moment in the sun is indefinite. Moments in the sun come and go, some faster than others. I'll tell you, one of the biggest mistakes that I made, I'll never forget, my first time going on the road on tour was very short lived, but first time really doing it in a major way, if I could use the word major underscore. Uh, I would go into a Champ Sports or a Foot Locker or some shoe store, and I'd be like, I'll take those, and those, and a 10. And that kind of, oh, well, I made 2,500 in this city. I make it in the next city or the next week or whatever the pay structure is
Yeah.
like. And just thinking that, hey, it's always going to be like this. And I've seen it where people were sitting financially high, artists were sitting financially high in a seasonal sense. I've seen it with bass players and lead
Yeah.
guitarists and drummers and DJs and backup singers and so forth. I've seen it where they're riding high and money is flowing for 120 days, 6 months,
Yeah. Yeah.
only to look up and now there's repossessions. They got to move back home. And by the way, I have been through all of those, so that's why I'm telling you this, right?
Yeah.
So, and it's not just me who has gone through it, but I've seen people next to
Yeah.
me, close to me, people who you and I know.
Yeah.
And so I think the thought that because it's good now, it's always going to be good is probably the biggest mistake that I've seen artists make.
That is so good, man. That is so good because again, you get caught up in the hype, and it's easy to get caught up in the hype when this is what you've been dreaming about. This is what you've been hoping for. This is what you've been fighting for. You're doing demos for this. You finally get there, and whatever level of success that is for you, or that it feels like success, then you take that as this is how it's going to be, and you just don't set yourself up for longevity. It's you're setting yourself for very short term when you think that way. And like you, I mean, I say that because I've done that. I experienced what that mindset was like, and it's different, man. I think that's why it's so important for why I wanted to have you on. I really wanted to have you on to get people to, if nothing else, just spark a thought of, maybe I could do this a little different, a little differently. Maybe I could set myself up in a different way than what I'm thinking right
Let
now.
me, if I can
Yeah,
insert
yeah, yeah, yeah.
something
Please,
here. I
please.
remember, um, when you're an artist and you're working all kinds of odd jobs, call center, now it's like Uber, Lyft, whatever. You're doing all these
Yeah,
odd things in the interim. And you remember me, man. I was an assistant manager at a shoe store.
yeah,
I was assistant
yeah,
manager at Finish Line, selling sneakers,
yeah,
right? In between recording sessions and this, that, and the other.
yeah,
I'll never forget, man. Later on, during a different season of my life, I'll never forget, man, the euphoria I felt when I got a $23,000 wire into my bank account. And I looked at my trajectory at that time, my path at that time, my pace at that time. Let me say it that way. And I was like,
mm-hmm,
it's on now.
mm-hmm,
It's on now. 23 grand at one time in a one
yeah,
instant moment where, it take you a while to do that. You know what I'm saying? Prior,
yeah,
I was like, and then there was something else in queue. I was like, I'm good. And all I could see was just wide open spaces, a wide open vista.
yeah,
I never thought I was going back to wherever there was, right? But can I tell you, man, in 60 days, not only did that count go down to zero, that count got closed. It was charged off. Now, I put myself out there to say the
yeah,
point we're making. You think when it hits, okay, boom, finally there's light that broke through the window. And all I could see is sunshine, not
yeah,
realizing that so much of this is cyclical and it goes in waves and it goes in seasons and you don't know how quick the next one is. It's peaks and valleys. Sometimes it's peaks, sometimes it's valleys. In fact, a lot of times it's valleys and fewer times it's peaks, depending,
yeah,
but you just got to be smart because you just don't know what tomorrow's going to look like.
yeah. Okay, so I'm an artist
Mhm.
and I'm getting started into this. What are some of the things? What are some of the signals? Whether it's internally within myself or things happening outside of me. What are some of the things that I should look for to let me know you need to get your finances together? You need to get your mindset together. What are some of those signals for me?
So um, I'm going to start going through some symptoms, right, of what that
Okay.
looks like. Because it always starts with our mindset, the way that we're thinking about a thing generally, right?
Yeah.
I would say to start when you have a excessive dependent upon lines of credit, whether that's a credit card, whether that is a line of credit from a bank or even a loan from a bank. When you find yourself um, more dependent on lines of credit than actual liquid, tangible cash, that is a sign that you're going down a very slippery slope, and
Okay.
you want to halt and dial it back and say, "Wow." So if I got a credit card, I'm just making up an arbitrary number here, and it has $1,000 limit, and I'm hitting 650 or $700 on it, what am I doing? Where I'm now, I'm not talking about leveraging credit.
Mhm.
I'm not talking about utilizing credit. I'm talking about relying on credit. That's a difference. And so that is a one telltale sign that I need to pause and get my bearings, get my financial
Mhm.
bearings.
Cool, man. Yeah, that's good stuff. All of it is. Oh, I told you I wasn't gonna keep you long, and I don't want to
You're good, man.
keep you too
This
long.
is
But
fun.
cool. Just I think one more question, and then we can close it out. Only if you promise to come back, uh,
Absolutely, man.
and do this
Can't even believe you
do
asked
this
that.
again.
But I understand.
Yeah,
You're the host.
I,
So you got to say
I
stuff
would.
like that. I get it.
um, yeah, man. Um, for now, people who have a little bit of success behind them, and we know a lot of those people. You know, people that maybe
Mhm,
are on television now or have successful
mhm,
musical careers. For these people that are a little more established, but are still struggling to find the right investments, or do the right thing with the liquidity
mhm.
they do have. Some advice on that.
Two things I'm going to say to that. A, invest in more tools in your tool belt. Let me say it this way. One of the things I had a manager tell me when I first got my investment license. One of the things I had a manager tell me as they were thinking about certain team members that they were going to keep versus those who they were going to let go. He said to me, one of the reasons why we can keep you, why we're going to keep you, is because you are a utilitarian. I thought, what do you mean utilitarian? Like you're one of those people that you have different strong suits. And here's what I mean by that, translating that for an artist. And I would say, if you come in on a vocal side, right, and that's
Mhm.
really your thing, right? You want to expand your knowledge base and your skill set. You want to raise it up to uh, a level of proficiency where now you have another tool in your tool belt. So that might be, you might be a vocalist who can engineer. You might be a vocalist who can write. You might be a vocalist who has really increased their ability to play a particular instrument. So your
Mhm.
musicianship has now come up to your ability to do things vocally. And it's not to say you're going to be hitting on all cylinders at the same level, but you want to be of such a level that if somebody says, "Oh, can you do this?" you can just pivot and do that.
Yeah.
People who can pivot can last and even earn more because they're increasing their value level that they bring to their craft and to the industry and to the market. So I would say that. And it doesn't even mean you have to be limited to music. You may be a vocalist who has a really good vision for treatments, video treatments. So maybe that looks like you're doing musical shorts and you're producing those through video and putting that content out or
Mhm.
something along those lines. Whenever you come in and we come in and we're sort of a one trick pony, the moment that trick don't work no more,
Yeah.
we're out the door, right? So you want to take the time while you're riding high to keep doing that, but say to yourself, what other tools can I add to my tool belt So I can pull out
Yeah.
these different utilities, right? So that's the first thing I would say. A. On the B side, I would say, so I guess in one word, you could say A would be diversify. On the B side, I would say look out from what you do in something that is unrelated to what you do and start dedicating coins to those things.
Mm,
So you might
yeah.
be an artist who has an interest in owning Airbnbs. I know people who own Airbnbs who make $125,000. So they can look at something that can create recurring revenue as a baseline
Hmm.
so that if they're not on the road or if something happens
Yeah.
musically, they're not now thrusted back into, okay, what am I going to do for money? So I would look at, how I can add more tools to what it is that I do, and then how can I invest in increasing my knowledge base into something that may be unrelated but long standing.
All right. That's me taking it all in. That's a lot of information, man. Really great stuff. I know this information. People definitely pay for it. So I can't thank you enough for sitting here with us and sharing this with us. Because it's important, man. It's important for us to really think, like, outside of our normal way of thinking as
Mm-hmm.
artists, as creatives. It's important that we understand that to set yourself up. And sadly enough, these aren't things that we're taught in school.
Mm-hmm.
At least weren't. I'm hoping that that's changed
Mm-hmm.
and that they're doing a little bit more of that. But this should have been taught in school. We should have known how to do things like this. But luckily, we have you here, and we have people like you that pour back into the community, and just want to see us grow, be better artists, be intelligent artists, and stop wasting stop wasting your resources on nothing. Make better choices, and that's what I'm hoping this does. It just helps people. Hopefully it'll help people to just make better choices. What's the last thing you would like to share with our audience?
Refuse to be pigeonholed by others and refuse to pigeonhole yourself. When I think about artists who have struggled, it's because they have somehow espoused the notion, I can't do anything else. And that just quite simply is not true. You're too creative to be confined to one aspect of who you are. It can translate into something else. Don't let others pigeonhole you and refuse to pigeonhole yourself.
Oh, well, thank you so much
Yep.
again for being here. And yeah, we're definitely gonna have you back. I think next time we come back, I'm gonna probably pull in a couple of the other hosts, because I know we can really talk about this and have some stuff, to just put our minds together, because I think it's a great conversation to have. So for all our listeners out there, thank you guys for joining us. Thank you for being a part of this. Please look at our website at themeshcollective.com. You can leave us your information there. We'll be dropping the app soon, really, really soon. So we're excited about that, getting it cleaned up for you guys and ready for use. So make sure you do that. Let us know what you think about this show as well. We're on all the available platforms from Apple to Google Play. And again, you can find us on the website there. And until next time, peace out, guys.
Welcome to Mesh.